We continue our week and our season and review series for Locked On Coyotes as we discuss three things to be hopeful for heading into the 2023-2024 season for the Arizona Coyotes. We're going to talk about that on today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On Coyotes. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Robyn Leonio. That's Carl Pavlak right beside me. And we got a great show for you guys on today's episode. We are going to discuss three things to be hopeful for going into next season for the Arizona Coyotes. And there is a lot of things to be hopeful for, Carl, because this team is trending upward.
Yep, absolutely. Things are moving in the right direction as of right now. Player development is going good. The first year a coach comes in, you often see players kind of play up. They want to make sure that they're looking their best in front of a new coach. And you'll occasionally see like a bit of a slump. That didn't happen for the Coyotes. Everyone kind of continued to develop like we need them to.
Yeah, they did. Year two under a coach always tends to be something to really pay attention to, and the Coyotes had some improvements, and they still had some shortfalls. We talked about the shortfalls on yesterday's episode, but still trending in the right direction, still making the right moves, and things that maybe we even haven't seen enough yet that are going to be coming in, pretty shortly. And, so let's go ahead and start off with the first thing to really be hopeful for, Carl, and that's incoming prospects. Because, first of all, let's first and foremost, we could very well get a full season of Dylan Guenther.
Yeah.
And that's going to be one. And we don't know at the time of this recording if Logan Cooley has made a decision to return to University of Minnesota for his sophomore year or to sign his contract. If he signed his contract, there's another thing right there. He can sign it, to have Cooley and Guenther coming in together is, to me, an exciting idea.
Yeah. Both players are really young, so I do want to say there's a potential that they at least start in the AHL or see time in the AHL, just because it's a thing that happens.
Right.
But I did think that Guenther looked a lot better as the season went on. He got confidence from the World Juniors. Just his play improved throughout the year, which is what you really want. Ultimately, it made sense to send him back down, but still, like, that is the kind of improvement that you want in a prospect.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was the idea that they wanted to make sure that that Guenther was able to get meaningful hockey.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting enough. He was going to get a lot of that in Arizona. He sure was going to get that in Seattle playing for the Thunderbirds, and be able to get some playoff hockey because WHL playoffs, in the way that the way that he's been playing with them. So it's it made all the sense, and for him to come back now that he's 20, he'll either start off with Arizona and then get sent down to Tucson, or maybe spend the entire year in Arizona. Who knows? But regardless, they're officially part of the organization. So if you are living in Arizona and you want to or living in the Valley and you want to take a trip down to Tucson, and both of them happen to be playing there alongside Josh Jones, by the way. Hey, you got some prospects to watch down there. For throughout most of this year, there weren't very many prospects to watch in Tucson. Next year, that might be a possibility.
Yeah. The Coyotes definitely took all of the good prospects to watch. It's nice that they're starting to get that growth. I do. One of my big concerns about the rebuild right now is the lack of prospects. Picks are great, but eventually, like, you need players who are going to play, and you kind of want them staggered so they're at different levels of development. I like the fact that they're getting more like kind of like later on prospects. And yeah, the Roadrunners could theoretically be a good team next year. If Gunther's with them for any part, I'm sure they'll definitely help. And just like, these are athletes who are still growing. They're not physically matured yet. Like, being 20 years old, you're like legally an adult, but it's not, you don't have the full body yet. Like, even a player like Jack McBain is improving physically.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So and that's the cool thing is you try to see what how prospects move on their way up, right? And I just named two. I just named two. Like we just need to, and you just named Jack McBain, who's played. You just got a chance to play his first full, like, most almost full year with the Coyotes, like kind of like close to full year. Um, and there's still a lot that we've yet to see. I mean, we've yet to see Connor Geeky. I think he's probably gonna. Well, now that he's gonna get ready for his age, we'll see. Probably play another year in.
Uh, I think he's got another year in juniors.
Another year in juniors. That probably makes sense. But you know, maybe he can get like a glimpse, right? We'll see him in training camp. Something to look for. Another thing to look forward to. You see all those prospects to come together. If you're a fan of watching prospects in general, prospect development camp, you can see all them, in one place.
Yep. Prospect development camp this season is definitely going to be the place to be.
Especially with all the players. And who knows what the what things look like beyond that? With the upcoming draft is we'll see some players coming in through that way as well. But prospects, 100%, and with the highlight, of course, on Gunther and Cooley, because like I think everyone's talking about them at this point because Gunther in the season that he had, and you mentioned, and Cooley because he was a Hobie Baker finalist.
Yeah.
Like,
He is
whether or not
rapidly
you
becoming one of the highest rated prospects, which is kind of astonishing for a player who went third overall that he is getting this much buzz, especially when Shane Wright was sent back down to juniors, so is still considered a prospect. But I think
Shane Wright
Cooley's
right now playing for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, who the Roadrunners most recently played in the Calder Cup playoffs.
oh, that's fun. Yeah, yeah, but it is definitely good to see the Coyotes prospects moving in the right direction.
100%. Well, outside of prospects, there are current players who are still young, trending in the right direction that we're also hoping for. We're going to talk about them in just a moment, but first, a quick word from our sponsors on the show. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets for your favorite events shouldn't be stressful, and Game Time is that way. You can buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. I know personally for me, I always hated uh, trying to buy tickets online. The fees racked up. I couldn't know exactly what the view of my seat was going to look like, and sometimes they're just more expensive for certain spots that just weren't even worth it. Game Time was the best place because I was able to get last minute deals and great seats for a really good price. They got images for the seat before I was able to buy them, so I was able to see exactly where I'd buy them. I'm talking about maybe buying tickets for Arizona Diamondbacks game, maybe even for a Phoenix Suns playoff game. Who knows? But the Game Time is definitely the place I go to when buying tickets. You can download the Game Time app now and create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest priced, guaranteed. So now let's move on, Carl. Talk about the the young players who did play last year for the Coyotes and have improved a lot. And I know off the air you talked definitely there are two that we're keeping our eyes on most importantly. But we can kind of expand on that in a little bit. But let's start off with those two, and Juuso Välimäki and Matthias Michelli.
Yes. Valimaki, especially because he was a waiver pickup, has just played really well. I do wish the team also had Connor Timmins, but
Yeah.
you know, can't really do anything about that. Valimaki has definitely improved as an NHL defenseman. He had 34 points, 4 goals, 30 assists this year, career highs in all categories. Just really good. Uh, Definitely needs to continue working on things. There's areas for improvement, but a good start for a 24-year-old defenseman.
Absolutely. Valimaki was another one of those players who, was struggling on, his former team, kind of unable to find his groove. He comes to Arizona, has a career year, or has a great bounce back at least. And going into next year, it's the hope is that he improves on that and continues to improve. And it I love to see that Arizona is the place to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've talked about a lot. If you have something to prove, being on a team like the Coyotes is a good spot for you.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how Shane Gothisbeer was able to do that. When he bounced back from some poor seasons in Philadelphia, comes to play for Arizona, has a huge bounce back, and then gets a decent return on a trade as the Coyotes got traded them in the trade deadline. Like it's
Yeah, yeah. Um, and Valimaki is earlier in his career than Gostisbehere.
oh yeah, much earlier.
I like that kind of like rebound and flip, like we saw that with Nick Bugstad as well.
Hmm.
But also just kind of like prospects who need to change the scenery. Hopefully, we can get more of those as the years go on.
Yeah, Valimaki did. Yeah, he did sign a extension. We're just 1 year, because he still has to kind of show the consistency, right? He
Yeah,
showed that he earned an extra contract, and I'm glad he did. But let's take a look at next year and see, like, okay, if he can continue this, is he worth getting a few more years off of? You'd say another 3-4 year deal or something like that.
yeah. And then the other player we talked about, Matthias Michelli, uh, Calder candidate, right, or hopeful. We haven't gotten the finalists yet. Definitely should be, in my opinion. Your opinion too. I'm guessing a lot of people, especially those who watch the Coyotes, are like, "This kid is something special."
Oh, 100%. The buzz that we got around here in Arizona around Matthias Michelli has been really fun.
Yeah,
Um, the Calder worthiness of him has really, rose up as everyone realized what kind of value he added to Arizona. It's the whether or not he's going to win the Calder Cup. Sorry, not Calder Cup, Calder Trophy this year. I'm thinking AHL for some reason again. But the is his of course remain to be seen. But uh, I think there is still a lot of hope and a lot of excitement going into his sophomore year.
yeah.
Sophomore years tend to be a challenge for a lot of players who had as good as a year they had in their rookie season. Um, but something's telling me that Michelli's only going to get better.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where your second year in the NHL, people know what to expect for you. They're scouting you. They know like his passing is going to be like a major thing that teams are going to be aware of because Michelli didn't have that many goals, but he was great at setting up players. Really good with Kraus, really good with Bukestad, solid with McMahon. Um, that is definitely, it's going to be a challenge for him to continue to improve. But I do feel like he is up to that challenge. Like the steps he took, and the fact that he's only 22 years old, like that's just blows me away.
Absolutely. So I think, to see, where he's going to go with it, it is exciting to see that challenge, uh, and you know, there was hope that he surpasses even expectation even more, right? Um, there was, especially if like how much this year. Like I think, you know, this year we knew he was going to be good because I mean, like, decent because we looked at how he played, in his, last year a little bit, kind of like had some glimpses, and even though like that didn't count as a rookie year because however many games he played, as well as his time in Tucson. I got to see a decent amount of time of his time in Tucson, and I was, you know, and I will say this: there were, out of the players I got a chance to see out of Tucson, um, and made the saying that this kid is going to be a special kid. Only two players have I really said that in my mind. There were some players who played in Tucson in the early years that are doing really well for the Coyotes now, but there are only two players who I've thought this kid is going to be special. Um, the first no longer plays for plays in Vancouver. Who are you talking about? I'm talking about Connor Garland.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the next one, Matthias Michelli.
You didn't think that with Strom?
No, I did not think about. I saw because, I mean, I saw Strom like he's good. I'm excited what he can do, but he needs proof. I need proof that he can play well at the NHL level. And I never saw that.
Yeah. And there's also the fact that like Garland was what, fifth round, I think.
Hmm.
Matthias Michelli, fourth
And
round.
Garland, like, his first year, he had issues away from the puck and whatever. And everyone criticized him in his first year. It's like, okay, these are his issues. Yes. And then the very next year, whoa, he
Yeah,
took on that. He improved. Um, and that's when when everyone really noticed that he was going to be special. Matthias Michelli, had the same feeling in a slightly different way. He kind of like, you know, came into a Roadrunners team in the last few years. If you've been following the Roadrunners, they have not been great. Um, but he still was able to be a decent light out of that team. A team that has still had Michael Carcone, and was like, hey, I'm gonna do my best out here. He gets called up, plays well with Arizona, and I'm like, yes, this kid's gonna be special.
yeah. It's a good call because I know I was definitely like he wasn't on my radar that much to start the year. Just because I thought he looked okay last season in his 23 games, but not great. And I also do not watch as much Roadrunners, so
I
definitely.
don't, unfortunately, don't anymore. So like, so don't come asking me if there's any people that I see out of that now. Um, I still get Roadrunners games. I was able to go to a Roadrunners game a couple weeks ago, in Bakersfield, um, and who knows what the next season looks like? Who knows what uh, you know, at this time we don't know what the playoffs what they look like in the playoffs, but you at the time, at least at the time of this recording, but we'll know what the rest of their playoff system looks like by this time. By the time you're listening to this, we'll talk about that on social media. So be sure to stay tuned on that. But who knows?
Yeah. You will know about the Roadrunners, and we'll be talking about the Roadrunners because, hey, getting to the playoffs, quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, at least they made the playoffs this year. I mean, to me, that's an accomplishment. First time making the playoffs since 2018. And yes, I know I talked about it on the preview I had with JD Hernandez. that Pacific Division playoff in 2021 does not count.
Okay, yeah.
Because that was just what one division that had.
Yeah, it was a weird year. You can't really call that playoffs if it's just one
It was
one.
postseason hockey. It wasn't playoff.
Okay, yeah, sure. And that makes
I'm
sense.
trying to get technical here. I don't know. you know. But yes. But anyways, outside of that, young players really improving out there. Michelli is definitely one, and lots of hope for what he's going to look like. And I'm just looking on Cat Friendly the fact that he's the same age as Barrett Hayton.
Which is surprising to me. But yeah, both took big steps in the same year. That's great.
Yep, 100%. Well, we're going to close things off in just a moment. We're going to get to our last, thing to look forward to going into next season for the Arizona Coyotes. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. And Carl, let's go ahead and finish things off. And let's talk about the continued growth of the core of this team. Because, I think at this time last year, we're figuring out like we're starting to figure exactly which players were core.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we figured out at least to an extent two. I can name two players who, without a doubt, will be part of this Coyotes team for years and years to come. Clayton Keller and Lawson Krause, without a doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it last segment, but that sophomore slump can hit coaches as well.
Yep.
Um, and so there was always going to be a question like, hey, Clayton Keller and Lawson Krause had two of their best or had their best year in their first season with a new coach. Is that going to continue? And the answer is unequivocally yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it really speaks a lot to Bear's coaching style and the way he's been. It's been uh, I wouldn't necessarily a breath of fresh air because there's still a lot of things that I think he can be work on, and that will be for a coaching review later on in our off-season series.
Yeah.
Um, but huge improvement over the last couple of coaches.
It is funny because on the one hand, I don't want to downplay the work that Clayton Keller and Lawson Krause put in the off seasons
Right.
because
Oh, 100%.
you know that
Especially
they
Keller because of his,
yeah.
breaking a leg last year and doing
Well,
what he
even
did.
the first year before Bear, I remember reading that he gained a lot of weight or a decent amount of weight to add strength, which is definitely something he needed to do. But like the players who were not doing great under Tockett are doing exceptionally well under Bear. And they've taken personal steps to improve. The system seems to fit with their play style better. Um, and we've also just seen a growth in scoring, but it's all kind of like right time, right place. And it does give you hope that, Krause is going to have another 20-goal season. Keller is going to be another point per game player next year. Like these are kind of the expectations that have been set. And they're pretty reasonable expectations based off of 2 years.
Absolutely. Like I personally love to get a third year, kind of add sample size, and
Sure.
because I think, a lot of people like to say, follow a rule of three, because rule of three kind of give you an idea of actual trends. Because two can be, one could be an outlier, two can be just coincidence, three is a trend.
Yeah. Three is also the funniest one. But yeah, it's, I don't know who would have thought they're most optimistic if Clinton Keller would be a point per game player at any point. Now I think that there is a reasonable expectation for him to be a 100-point player at some point.
Oh yeah, we've kind of talked about that. very briefly in the last segment. We talked about the personnel, and it's like, hey, look, there are other teams in which their top players can easily reach 100 points, especially this last season.
Yeah.
That scoring is up. The personnel for the Coyotes weren't outside of Keller and Kraus and the others isn't the best, but there's reason to have hope that they're only going to continue to improve, and that maybe not next year, but the following year, that Keller will be a hundred plus point player.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just glad like we didn't see him like immediately drop to like a 20 goal, 30 assist season. Like, because it very easily could have been, especially with injuries. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Keller's production could have stopped. Other teams could have gotten used to the system. It could have easily shut him down. The same with Lawson Krause. He didn't play exceptionally well, but he has back to back 20 goal seasons. Looking back at like, there's been years where the Coyotes didn't have a single 20 goal player. Mikkel Bodker, like, was almost like locked in for the Coyotes before hitting a 20 goal season. Kraus has had two straight, and he's got that bar now. He is a power forward. You should be expecting 20 goals from him.
Especially the kind of power forward that fits perfectly into Bear and Bill Armstrong's system.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a reason why he was signed the deal that he was.
And like you could even like go down to some of the other players who aren't here anymore. Like Shane Gostisbehere was able to keep up his production and looks like a much better player. I thought Jacob Chikrin bounced back much better than he did his first season under Bear. He had
I
the
mean,
biggest
with the
adjustment.
there's a reason for that one too, especially because Jacob Chikrin had a lot extra responsibility since that Oliver Ekman Larson was no longer on the team.
Yeah.
And I think that first year was a struggle, but he did bounce back up to the point where he got his value, his value as up as possible for the trade. It still probably wasn't as much as we expected, but still, he still was able to get there.
Yep. So it is definitely a good thing that we didn't see regression this year. Like that was a very real possibility. It didn't happen. And I think that is something that should be, you know, you don't have to celebrate it because it's not the biggest accomplishment, but it is notable. It is a good thing.
Exactly. Well, Carl, but we're getting close to out of time on this one. I do want to give one really quick, bonus thing to look forward to, and it's a really quick one. It all depends on what happens in about 3 weeks from now. So we're probably this is going to be by the time you listen to this, it is Wednesday, April 26th, and just under 3 weeks from now is May 16th. That is in just a few Tuesdays from now, 3 Tuesdays from now. That's the election for the Tempe Entertainment District. Whatever happens in that election, the Coyotes by the start of next season, they've already broken ground on their new permanent home.
I mean, I don't know if they'll have broken
They'll
ground.
probably do it right away. They'll probably do it pretty damn fast. Well, I mean,
Yeah, but
let's say broken
there's a
ground to
remediation
remediate the land.
process.
Yes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. The plan will be in motion. Um,
The process will
hopefully,
begin.
yeah. Hopefully, there's nothing going on with the airport lawsuit. There's a lot going on, but yeah, the vote is a very big step. Something to look forward to.
It is something 100% to look forward to. And this it seems it's gonna move in the right direction. Let's speak it into existence. Anyways, any final thoughts you want to do before we close things off?
Uh, just that the team could have taken a step back. They didn't. We talked last episode about some problems that they still have. Those absolutely exist, but it's better that things are at least trending the right way.
Yeah, they're trending the right way, and that's what you want as a rebuild from a rebuilding team. And I think a lot of us probably would have hoped that this team could be, you know, have higher lottery odds, but especially in a year like this year. But to be honest, Carl, I'm glad that to see what they're trending, especially as going back to the upcoming election. You want to be able to prove to the residents here that you're trending in the right direction, that you're moving towards a team that can be a championship team in the years to come.
Yep.
And while it's not that right now, at least they are trending. Anyways, though, we're out of time on today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano. Carl Pavlock is at 5 for Howling. Interact with us, ask the question you might have, we might answer right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys staying safe out there. Hope you guys staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.